morning, Nigerians. Thank you from wherever in the world you're watching, especially to the Arsenal fans. We hope that you had a decent night and that you're off to a great start this morning. You're welcome to Breakfast Central. This morning we are going to be exploring some of the biggest political conversations, but not before we bring you wake-up talks. I am Olive Emodi.
And I'm Benga Boro. It's a terrific Thursday for me, and I'll tell you why I'm very excited this morning. It's the best place to start your day, Breakfast Central. You already know. I am Benga Boro.
And I'm Joe Hansen, welcoming you to today's edition of the show, Breakfast Central. It's a Thursday, and we are indeed excited to be here. Most importantly, taking off from where Olive started from, hope all Arsenal fans had a fantastic night. Well, apparently that happens to be our very first wake-up conversation story, because that's what took people to sleep, and that's what woke them up this morning. I can't imagine being an Arsenal fan and brushing your teeth while looking at the mirror this morning.
I mean, how do you go from the highs of beating City 5-1 to losing to Newcastle? I'm a Newcastle fan.
By the way, Benga's a Newcastle fan.
Yes, I've been a Newcastle fan since 1999. We've been relegated twice, and I stayed with the team supporting them. And trivia, quick trivia, my first Newcastle jersey was a gift from NATO C. In the year 2000, that's 25 years ago.
Wow. I think I just want to say to Arsenal fans that if there's nothing that can be applauded about your club, I think the strength of your character, your resilience, and your ability to stay through even when things are tough. I want to send a big shout out to a number of my Arsenal friends, to Mario Esse, to Mazi Stanley, and to Kelechi Anyukude. I think that, it must have been a really, really tough night.
I mean,
my heart and my thoughts and prayers go to you.
As a Newcastle fan, I'm happy we're going to Wembley. Newcastle hasn't won any trophy in the last 70 years, so you can imagine how excited the fans are.
Newcastle is the stone that the builders rejected and have become the chief cornerstone.
We really have. And then one more thing about Arsenal. The first leg, we won 2-0 at the Emirates, and then we've beaten them 4-0 in aggregate. The coach, yes, Mikel Arteta, said, the ball is fast, the ball is too fast. They started calling them Excuse FC. Like, what kind of excuse? So the opposition used a different type of ball. Okay, better luck next time.
Anyway, they also call them the seasonal club. They say if you're an Arsenal fan, you wait for next season.
Or the club, they've won we beat Man City trophy.
Yeah,
it's an achievement.
Stay humble. Stay humble.
Stay humble.
Anyway. It's just really sad at the end of the day to see how it actually thoroughly affects their mood. Some people, I'm sure they went to bed without eating last night.
It does. Well, this morning we're sympathizing with Arsenal fans, just in case you were one. Take heart, drink a lot of water this morning. Try not to think about the loss. Try to talk to a loved one.
Or they can behave like Nigerian politicians and decide to port to another party.
Oh, yeah, but Arsenal fans will never port. That's the problem. They're die-hard fans. That's what they call themselves.
Maybe that's the kind of quality that the Nigerian politicians should have. Choose an ideology. Choose a club or a party that has the ideology that you can die for. And stick to it, come rain, come shine.
But still on Wake Up Conversations, we brought you the story earlier in the week. It was very heart-wrenching. It was the story of the monarch in Ife, Ogun State. He has been remanded in prison custody. Oba Adesemiu Ogunjobi, who was assaulting the embattled monarch, was arraigned on a 3-count charge of conspiracy, assault, and conduct likely to cause a breach of public peace. I like that justice was swift, even though, the court hasn't ruled on that, but he's been remanded in prison custody. He's facing the wrath of the law. In the past, we used to wait for nemesis to catch up with lawbreakers, but now the law is moving swiftly.
And that's a statement made by Prince Olumuyiwa Adejobi, who happens to be the police PPRO. He said the Kabiyesi Abdul Semiu Ogunjobi, who assaulted one elderly man in a viral video in Ife, Ogun State, has been charged to court today, 4th of February 2025, on a 3-count charge of conspiracy, assault, and conduct likely. It was granted bail while the case was adjourned to today. The case would go on today, if I'm right.
So this was 4th of February?
Yeah.
Yes.
06,
Okay.
03, 2025. If we go by, you know, the 6th of February, or 6th of March, I beg your pardon. This is going to be 6th of March, I beg your pardon. The police will continue to uphold the rule of law and the core values of the noble profession. Bunga, do you think social media had an impact in ensuring that he was apprehended?
It did, because social media has a way of magnifying things, and when things are trending, even if you're governor, there's a way it gets to you. You can't just ignore it. And I want to ask our resident legal luminary, Barrister Olive Emodi, how do you feel about this swift dispensation of justice?
Well, I think that it's important that we applaud the police for swinging to action. I don't know what the reasons were. It could be social media. It could be the fact that there was also disparaging comments made about them, insinuating that they're being manipulated. Whatever the case is, I think it's brilliant that, you know, this has come to light. And it also, again, shows the power of social media. I can't underestimate the influence that social media had in the speedy arrests and, you know, the prosecution. I mean, we haven't yet gotten to actual prosecution. The 6th of March is when the case will be heard. But it's brilliant that that's happening, and we're very, very excited to see that. And I'm hoping that this will serve as a deterrent to people who feel like they can, once they have small power, they would abuse it, use it. Power is, you know, it's not permanent. One day you would leave that seat. Either you leave the seat to another office, or you leave the seat and you go 6 feet beneath the ground. Either way, you're not going to die with power. So I'm hoping that at the end of the day, there's a lesson that we all can pick from this. I saw some people trolling him and saying that after everything that happened, he couldn't pay the bail fee. Those were some of the
Olive,
reactions.
just still talking about power and position, I just want to ask you on the side. You know, you're a lawyer, and you refer to you and your colleagues refer to yourselves as learned people. Do you sometimes look down on Joe and I? For being ordinary mass comm graduates.
Well, I'm not that kind of person. You know, I understand where you're coming from. In fact,
because I'm very learned colleague.
Carry us along.
No, you were educated, you know, not learned. I'm not behaving like all those people. Did you see the doctorate argument on Twitter?
Oh my
about
God.
those who say PhD? Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. I think we should handle that one day. But
we should
congratulations to all of us on the arrest of the Oba. I'll call him at this point, and we hope that we can follow through, and it's not just
it also
as lessons.
Yes, it also goes to show that the fourth realm, which is journalism, and of course the news platforms, need to continue to do more, especially speak up when it comes to assault. That man who knelt down on the floor was a 73-year-old. Ariola Abraham, 73 years, and he completely dehumanized. It made him look
curses on him.
Curses made him look all useless. Now, this is one question that struck me so hard, Olive and Benga, when I saw this story. If this were to be your father, how would you feel?
Terrible.
Terrible, terrible.
Dad, I saw you kneeling down.
You will never forget. You will never forget this moment.
Then, you know, going to school, they say, come, I saw your father. Your father, this boy, your papa. You know,
he's even infringed on a right that this man has. This man has the right to dignity of human person. He stripped his dignity by treating him in this way. Again, I must emphasize that on the one hand, it's terrible because he's a 73-year-old man. And here in Nigeria, we pride, one of our values is respect. But then again, even as a human being, no human being deserves to be treated this way. We are not in, this is not where you are Lord and sovereign and then you're treating your subjects. How is this different from slavery?
I mean, we've seen the Nigerian police
look at that slap. Look at that.
We've seen Nigerian police parade suspects that have committed the most despicable crimes you could ever think of, and they weren't even treated this way. So,
speaking about the display and parade of suspects, again, that's another conversation that we should have on another day. Because the legality of that can be argued when a person has not yet been tried, they've not yet been brought before a court of contempt.
Look at that.
You can actually just be on the road buying something and they bundle you into their van.
And it's against the Nigerian Constitution, Section 36, subsection 5.
Look at my lawyer in training.
I want to belong.
Benga, you didn't tell me you're taking courses at night.
I love
night
it so much.
Law course, right? You're trying to be a lawyer. That's your. It's fine. But anyway, this video you're seeing, guys, I just want to highlight as well that the Oba was said to have committed offense contrary to breaching the law and so on, contrary to punishable under Section 249. of the Criminal Code laws of Ogun State of Nigeria. Not just that, we do hear that those, especially those who were slapping 73-year-old Mr. Abraham, they fled. They left the Oba alone. So the Oba is the only one in police custody. His associates have decided to run away.
I hope he sings like a bird, and they get everybody who was involved. The videographer, the one who was slapping, and those who were standing along with him and had nothing to do about it. Yes, I hope that the Oba sings like a bird and they're all arrested. But let's move on now to another story. And now this time, spokesperson, I won't call him a spokesperson, an APC member, a chieftain, Ambassador Nurain Abayomi Momoni, has called on political office holders to not distract presidents from basically governance. They're saying that 2027 conversations have started and they should stop dragging President Bola Ahmed Tinubu into 2027 conversations, and that they should allow him to rule, to lead, and to
focus on governance.
Yes, focus on governance, because we have a lot of socio-political and economic issues to deal with as a country, and that 2027 talks should not be the focus.
Well, in line with that, while you also make mention of that, on the other side, a PDP member also spoke up, especially with what happened at the National Assembly yesterday, while they were on the other hand, eulogizing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and allowing him to focus on his job. On the other side, the PDP members decided to say that no, whatever happened at the BOT will indeed go down as an acceptable decision. But now, if you guys saw what took place at the National Assembly yesterday as well, the Senate President had to make a mockery out of what's happening in the PDP. The PDP is divided, by the way, as we speak. While the president is doing his job, the PDP, on the other hand, is divided because they say that they recognize National Secretary Ude Okoye as the national, of course, you could say secretary representing the party. But Binga, we did see a lot of back and forth
we saw the drama unfold at the PDP headquarters a few weeks ago, Wadata Plaza. There was a lot of Jet Li and Jackie Channon taking place there, and a lot of people came out to rightly say the things that happened there was a disgrace. So the PDP Board of Trustees members met, and they said, Mr. Ude Okoye is the rightful is the rightful national secretary of the party. And the opposition, Mr. Onwanyang, who left that position to go contest for governorship, and he didn't win. Then he came back and said, okay, I want to go back to my former position, and said, look, that seat is not vacant anymore. They went to court. The court affirmed Mr. Ude Okoye as the rightful owner of that seat, and the case is still in court, and I believe the Supreme Court would. The Court of Appeal affirmed Ude Okoye as the national secretary, but the PDP Board of Trustees also said, Ude Okoye is the rightful national secretary, but Onwanyang was protesting and saying no, it doesn't agree with their decision. So it's still a divided house.
No doubt. It's a conversation that will indeed go down up until we get to 2027. It pretty much seems like there's no political party like the PDP as we speak now, because it is even divided within itself. That's what we're trying to say.
I don't think that comes as a surprise. It's the norm with political parties in Nigeria. PDP and APC are often referred to as PD-APC. They're like two sides of the same coin. They're Siamese twins. They accuse each other of things that they're both guilty of. The idea of forcing themselves into certain seats of power. They're holding on to power like their life depends on it. Labour Party seemed to be the breath of fresh air. Many people hoped that it was a breath of fresh air, especially with the wave of popularity that they gained at the last elections. What we do see, however, it's maybe not as different as we thought it was.
Factions, and it's divided. The NNPP too, it's divided. Someone argued that another person is using his secondary school logo as the party's logo. And things
I mean,
like
at this day and age, we're arguing about logo, the one that has corn and the one that has cassava and tea. Come on, well, 2020.
We'll get it right.
Anyway, that's all on Wake Up Conversations. Let's take a look at the top stories for today here on Breakfast Central.
President Tinubu writes National Assembly increases 2025 budget to 54.2 trillion naira. President Tinubu raises 2025 budget for security, agriculture, and more. We're also looking at the Lagos Assembly Speaker dispute persists. President Tinubu to intervene. Obasa is still in the news. Group accuses Kogi State Governor of diverting 13.4 billion naira. We'll review the newspaper front pages this morning and tell you what's happening, opening the phone lines for you to call as well. All these and more on Breakfast Central.
You're welcome to Breakfast Headlines. I am Benga Aboroa. The Nigerian Senate has approved the termination of 3 resident electoral commissioners suspended since 2023 for violating the Independent National Electoral Commission Act. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu requested the dismissal, citing allegations of electoral infractions. The affected commissioners are Dr. Nura Ali of Sokoto State, Barrister Hudu Yunusab Ari of Adamawa State, and Professor Ikemefuna Uzochukwu of Abia State. Senate Leader Michael Opeyemi Bamidele invoked Section 157 of the Constitution, emphasizing the Chamber's authority to act. A security report indicted Dr. Nura Ali for corruption, incompetence, and accepting $150,000 bribe. Senate President Godswill Akpabio presided over the session, approving the termination in line with the constitutional provisions. And now to security matters. Police have arrested a suspect linked to the deadly attack on Amegu Nkalaha community in Ishelu, Ebonyi State. Spokesperson of the Ebonyi Police Command, SP Joshua Ukandu, confirmed that the suspect was apprehended while attempting to flee and was handed over to the Isi Uzo Police Division. Commissioner of Police Antonia Uche Anya has deployed a tactical team to track down the attacker. During a raid on their hideout, officers recovered 3 locally made guns, police uniform, jungle boots, and military camouflage. Authorities say investigations are ongoing and urge anyone with relevant information to come forward. Meanwhile, at least 15 bodies have been recovered from the attack site, with several residents still unaccounted for. The suspended traditional ruler of Orilefo, Oba Ade Abdulsemiu Ogunjobi, has been remanded at the Laro Correctional Center in Ogun State after failing to meet his bail conditions. A spokesperson for the correctional facility, Yinka Odukoya, confirmed the development on Wednesday, saying the monarch would remain in custody until his bail conditions are fulfilled. The Ogun State Police Command had arraigned Oba Ogunjobi on Tuesday following a viral video that showed him assaulting a 73-year-old man, Abraham Ariola. According to the charge sheet, the suspended monarch is accused of conspiracy, assaults, and conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace. And let's tell you that the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, has called for greater collaboration between security agencies and stakeholders to boost crude oil production. Speaking at a strategic meeting in Rivers State, General Musa emphasized oil production's vital role in Nigeria's economic stability. A statement from the Defense Media Operations says discussions focused on security challenges hindering optimal output. Musa acknowledged progress with oil production surpassing 1.8 million barrels per day, but stressed the need to meet President Tinubu's 2.2 million barrels per day target. He urged stakeholders to address key challenges and work towards inclusive solutions, reaffirming the military's commitment to protecting all assets and tackling crude oil theft. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Breakfast Central continues shortly.
Let's begin the conversation this morning looking at budgets. President Bola Tinubu has called on the Senate to approve an increase in the 2025 proposed budget from its initial 49.7 trillion naira to 54.2 trillion naira. This was done via a letter sent to the Senate and read during plenary by the President of the Senate in Abuja. News Central's National Assembly correspondent, Sagia Ibrahim, brings us more details.
Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has described the 2025 budget, dubbed the budget of restoration, as a reflection of the administration's priorities in advancing its developmental goals. With 4.91 trillion naira allocated to defense, the Minister of Defense says it underscores the President's commitment to national security.
Well, I believe the President has allocated enough resources for the security, to address the security situation in the country. That shows that the President is concerned about the security situation in the country and he's determined to end the insecurity in this country.
Some lawmakers, however, reacted to the presentation of the 2025 appropriation bill by the President.
What concerns me as a parliamentarian is not the issue of statistics being churned in day in, day out. I need to see the reflection of these statistics on my people. I need to see the reduction in poverty. I need to see the serious reduction of hunger. As you go to my constituency tomorrow, the hunger that they witnessed in 2022 is double, is replicated in 2023, double in 2024. So where will that take us?
Some of the assumptions are very optimistic and may not be realizable. We pray that it goes the way he has projected. For example, aiming to hit 2 million barrels per day production of crude oil. As at now, I don't know what the officials are telling him, but I doubt very much if that represents the reality on ground.
We're too import dependent, so our naira is busy pursuing the dollar, and that's why the naira is going weaker and the dollar is getting stronger. And so that projection is to say the level of production that they envisage with that budget will help in bringing down the demand, because we'll be self-reliant, producing what we eat.
With the 2025 appropriation bill now submitted to the National Assembly, members of Parliament will begin to scrutinize the figures in order to facilitate its passage. They, however, urge heads of ministries, departments and agencies to cooperate with the National Assembly to ensure the bill is speedily passed. In Abuja from the Central, I am Joshua Imada.
Now, here's what you need to know about the increased budget. President Tinubu increased Nigeria's 2025 budget, citing additional revenues from the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, Nigerian Customs Service, and other agencies. The budget allocates funds for sectors like solid minerals, agriculture, and infrastructure, emphasizing security as a priority. ₦1 trillion is directed towards the solid mineral sector, with 1.5 trillion for Bank of Agriculture recapitalization. There's also 500 billion naira for the Bank of Industry and over 1.5 trillion for critical infrastructure. Senate President Godswill Akpabio promised to pass the budget by February 2025 after, of course, legislative review.
Now, looking at what this budget increase would mean for the average Nigerian is what we cannot say. Like previous years, will this be just one of those budgets passed with actually nothing to show for it? We believe it's beyond numbers. So joining us to talk about what this means and if this is a step in the right direction is investment banker and public affairs analyst, Dr. Naimeka Obiariri. Good morning. Thank you for joining us, sir. Dr. Obiariri, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. Thank you for joining the show. So please, first of all, speak to the increase in the budget. The fact that it's happening, is this a good move? Did you see that this was going to happen? There are many people who argued that the initial budget that was presented wasn't presented on with a total picture in place. So is this a step in the right direction?
To be honest, I will not say it's a step in the right direction or otherwise, but the additional increase in revenue, a projection of 6 trillion, is not too much of something anybody should be so worried about, because I even looked at the agencies concerned and the FIRS, Customs Service, and then they said other agencies 1.8 trillion, but those agencies were not properly defined or what they are bringing to the table. You know, I am one of those who believe that 54 trillion naira budget for a country like Nigeria is not that too ambitious. Some people think it's over ambitious. I even listened to the Sereke Dixon talking
Former
about
governor.
2 million barrels crude production a day being over-ambitious. It's not over-ambitious. That if the government is very sincere to protect our oil assets and to do the right things, we've asked them to always to channel investment in that sector and enhance security of the fossil fuel that is produced from the already performing oil wells. Nigeria, at the time in this nation in 2010, did almost about 2.8 million barrels a day with crude and condensate, and we exported 2.4 million and used the other one for our local use. So a 2 million barrel projection is not too ambitious. They can actually do 2.4 if they want to do, if they can muster the sincerity and the courage to unbundle the NNPC to become like Petrobras, sell down 70% of the federal government holding through the Federal Ministry of Finance Incorporated and Petroleum Ministry, 30% to 3 core investors, 10% with deep pockets and deep knowledge on how that industry is run, and then 40% to Nigerians. Then get the new NNPC to be listed on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange to be as efficiently run as Petrobras and Nigeria liquefied natural gas. And then they do an IPO of $20 billion. If they do this, they will have extra $40 to $60 billion sitting at the Central Bank of Nigeria, which will help us to show up price stability and forex stability. And they know they can do that. This can be done in 6 months, within 6 months, if they are very sincere. And then on the extra monies that they've allocated, I believe that is also one of the reasons why we need to fast track the passage of the new tax reform bill. And the federal government of Nigeria, actually, the Tribal Administration muted the idea of, margin revenue collection, so that customs and the rest of them will stay away from our hinterland and stay at the border post, and then allow the new Nigerian Revenue Service to be collecting those revenues, digitized revenue collection. I'm one of those who believe that customs have not been remitting almost up to 60% of what they actually, 50% of what they collect. Because if customs are actually remitting and the corruption is eliminated through digitized operation and all those stuff, customs should be remitting even more than FIRS, based on the volume of import into this country and what they are currently collecting. And I also believe if the government is sincere, we don't have no business running budget deficit. The lowest hanging fruit, which we've always advocated, and is the agricultural sector. Giving 500 billion to Bank of Industry is not the way out. They should set up an agri-trust fund, transparently run and managed. If they can seed it with $1 or $2 billion, they can attract additional $12 billion and do agro packs, 2,500, $6 billion each. We've done the BOQ and the execution plan, the business plan for it. We can hand it over to them. If they do this, in the next 1 year, Nigeria will be doing almost about $109 billion agro exports across all the value chain. These are things they can do. So there's nothing so wrong with the increase. I believe Nigeria should be doing almost about 100 trillion to 150 trillion naira federal government budget if we actually sweat our potentials, reduce corruption and inefficiencies and waste at the ministries, departments, and agencies, and then focus on the key and critical sectors. On infrastructure development, not much was provided there. I believe federal government cannot provide all the infrastructure need through physical revenue. I've always advocated that one of the best routes through which we can do this is to create diverse private-public partnership frameworks. I've found some of the structures we've developed. I termed it missions, community development, diaspora, private-public partnership arrangement. I said to anybody who cares to listen, Nigeria is 12,000 kilometer ring-fenced rail corridor, and the most lucrative route, 807 kilometers, is still the west-east route. The 11 governors will then that flank from Lagos, Shagamu, Ijebu-Ode, or Benin, Onitsha, or Port Harcourt, Enugu, Abakaliki, Afiko, back to Onitsha. That would take about $5.2 billion to do under a TPOT arrangement, 45 years. Equity contribution, $1.2 billion. The rest borrowed in 5 years, and traffic every year, 300 to 500 passenger traffic. That rail corridor can be repaid back in 7-8 years. Investors will be very glad to put in their money, and we can do all in other sectors of Nigeria. But we must put the right structure in place, and we must do further amendment of the Constitution to allow the physical waterfall and framework to go back to what it used to be between 1960 to 1966, so that the constituent units will look inward. There is no state in Nigeria, I repeat, that cannot generate between $30 to $20 billion annually within their domain. But the problem is that we are running a Babiala, beggarly physical federalism that is so concentrated in Abuja. People focus so much on Abuja without looking at the constituent units.
Thank you so much for your analysis, Dr. Obiorari. Now let's talk about inflation and cost of living. Given Nigeria's ongoing inflationary pressures, could this budget fuel further inflation, or will it help stabilize the economy by boosting productivity and job creation?
Believe you me, we are not fighting inflation through using the right combination of instruments, both physical and monetary. I hear us and I see us every time jack up the MPR rate. The inflation element that can be tackled using the MPR rate is not up to 10%. The major factor driving inflation in Nigeria is price and the effects instability. In fact, the effects instability is already, we are already seeing the Naira hover between 1,500 and 1,000, which is okay, but we still need to do a lot in that area to show, and that means for us to have stable forex stability, we need to shore up dollar liquidity. Look at UAE. Over the last 16, 18 years, the dirham had been at 3.66 to the dollar. Nigeria used to be like that between 1970. We used to have the Nigerian pounds stable against the US dollar. In fact, it was 66 pence to the US dollar. For 6 years, it never moved. In fact, in 1970, the Nigerian pence then actually gained over the US dollar by 57 pence to $1 because we had a productive economy. Across board, agro-driven, solid mineral-driven, across all the 4 regions then in Nigeria. So how do we tame inflation? If you look at inflation in Nigeria, the highest contributor to it is food inflation, food and energy inflation. Food and energy inflation, because that is what brought us to where we are today. How do we tackle food inflation? For us to tackle food inflation, we need to tackle insecurity. You see what's happening in Northwest and Northeast. I hear the military every time say, oh, we'll push back. You don't need to push back the bandits, Lukawara, ISWAP, and Boko Haram. Nigeria has the strength, in-depth strength to destroy these guys in 6 months. If we are very sincere and we have mustered the political will, we cannot be pushing back those we can easily liquidate. That is the truth. If we can tackle insecurity, and we have advised them on how they can restructure the security architecture of Nigeria to give us 6 months, 1 year window to destroy these elements that have been creating wahala for us. And if we do it, and the farmers are able to go back to work, and now we'll bring in structure, we'll bring in transparency, we'll bring in mechanization, we'll bring in technology. In our agro development, we can do $250 billion. We can produce 100% of what we consume here. Then on energy security, we are gas rich. We were not sweating our gas. Look at Nigerian refined natural gas, one of our cash cows. They don't even receive enough natural gas to fire at up to 65% nameplate capacity. That is what we should be thinking about. What do we do in the short term to ensure that we bring down the cost of energy in Nigeria? A liter of PMS hovers between 900 to 1,100. It's something that used to sell for 7 naira. Can we bring it down to 500 naira, at least stabilize it at that level over the next 1-2 years? Yes, we can do it. And how do we do it? The current refineries are not working. Even after we spent 11 trillion naira on them, the public-owned refineries, over the last 25 years. Obasanjo saw the need for us to inject private sector efficiency in that area. What do? We bring the 3 refineries. Kaduna is already dead. Let us stop wasting our money in Kaduna. Warri, Port Harcourt, combined nameplate capacity, both of them. We sell down 80% to private investors. NNPC retain 20%. Now, the 4,000 barrels that is earmarked for it, we go into a special arrangement. Cost plus margin arrangement. Cost of production is $31. Cost of refining is $10. $41. 30% margin brings it to about $53. You can't sell it above that. Across all the white petroleum range, gasoline, gas oil, DPK, HHK. When you put in this place, we will have something like an IMPET, a petroleum purchasing company, owned by Tipman, Maman, IPMAN, and other SROs. So they all come together and we'll now put in place digital cover to ensure that all these petroleum products that are produced here in Nigeria are consumed here in Nigeria. We introduce another 160,000 barrels a day capacity for co-located in Port Harcourt. When we do this, no matter whatever happens in the international market, you see that go to tell you, oh, crude oil went up, crude oil went down. That is why they are adjusting prices. If we have this special purpose arrangement, we will have petroleum products in Nigeria coming down, but it will be average of 500 naira per liter. It will trend down because over time the market will gain traction, and we'll have once we have stabilized energy costs, you will see inflation crash. When we're able to produce what we consume here, I am in that agri sector and I'm in the energy sector, so I understand what I'm talking about. When we put in place this, we will crash inflation. But as long as we continue to leave the physical side, which is where the white elephant is in the room, and then begin to depend on the central bank, who is not even receiving enough dollar inflow to stabilize the naira, to be twinkling and be fiddling with NPR, we'll be wasting our time. And that is the truth. There was a time in this country when NNPC was remitting about $3.6 billion every month to the Central Bank of Nigeria. And that was why the central bank governors were able to stabilize the naira. But today, the central bank barely receives $550 million from NNPC. And we're not looking at it. The weakest link in the room is NNPC. They have become the problem. And why President Tinubu have refused to do the right thing by putting in place the recommended structures and reforms in that place to make it as transparently run as the Petrobras, as LNG, is what yet I don't understand.
All right. I mean, the NNPC has always come into the conversation. This isn't the first time that we've had NNPC being brought up in conversation from even administrations before this. But I want us to go back to the budget. Now that we're looking at this increase, how do we guarantee transparency and ensuring that the allocations that are being made are used for the intent and the purposes that they're being, intended for?
Olive, I'm one of those, based on experience, based on what had happened in Nigeria, I believe that 60% of whatever is put in the budget as both recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure across the 3 tiers of government and MDAs are looted. And that is the truth. If Nigerian budget is to be transparently done, zero budgeting, bottom up, the way they said they will have, they promised, they came up with a hype in 2015. Oh, we are going to go back to zero budget. Let me tell you, if you involve the likes of Deloitte, the likes of PwC, the likes of KPMG, in the budgeting process at the MDAs, I tell you the truth, you will discover that over 60% of whatever we budget in Nigeria as expenditures are looted into private pockets. And that is why you can see the former accountant Yara, they discovered 102 billion naira in his account. You ask yourself, you from Maitama to Asokoro to Banana Island to most of the high-pro areas, you will see civil servants, directors, owning massive properties, directors whose salaries in 100 years cannot even build a decent three-bedroom bungalow in Lekki Phase 1. It's the same thing. Every year, what they do is that they bring the old budget, they flesh it up. That's why you see a budget over, you see plates, 100 million, plates, 100 million. You will be there. Nothing is good. And let me tell you, it's a game. The National Assembly that is supposed to be there as checks and balances, all they do, you saw the drama in National Assembly. Where was it the police budget? They shared the budget to those they wanted to see it, and those other ones they didn't want to see it, they gave them a different copy. And it's already arranged. The National Assembly that is supposed to be a goalkeeper, a gate man, is out there. They are pursuing contracts rather than supervise and provide oversight function. They are part of the game. You saw under the last regime, it was the same thing. It was the same thing. It is drama. So if truly we want to have efficiency, you see what's happening in America. Donald Trump decided to put in place Department of Government Efficiency. And of course, see the kind of guys he put there, Ranswani and Elon Musk. These are not the kind of guys we're going to bribe. This is the wealthiest man in the whole world, worth $1 billion. So you can see the kind of things that are unearthing. That is America. If you put in such a director of government efficiency in Nigeria, and you put someone like Nemeko ready to head it, to come through the budget of the federal government of Nigeria, MTS, I tell you only, in 6 months, what will on earth will shock the whole world? 60% of what we budget every year across the government are looted. That is why we have problems. If the what we have appropriated in Nigeria are applied to the key and critical sectors are used in this country will be far, far better than where it is today.
Thank you for that submission. I mean, we have a lot to still hope for when it comes to implementation of budgets. But let's look at budget deficit and borrowing. How does this budget revision affect Nigeria's fiscal deficit? And will the government need to borrow more? And if so, what are the implications for debt sustainability? Because we've discovered more revenue, we are not using it to service our debt, and quite a lot of percentage of this budget is from borrowed money. So how do we balance our books? How do we take care of debt servicing with all this renewed revenue?
See, one of the things that I've discovered about the political class in Nigeria is they are very insensitive. The current political class in this Fourth Republic, unlike the likes of Jokonde, Tafawa Balewa, Ahmadu Bello, Simon Bakwe, and Michael Obara, who care so much and had compassion for their people and taught legacy. This was only think about how to spend. They don't even think about tomorrow. Remember in 2015, June 30th, our total national budget was 12 trillion. Buhari came into power, and by the time he left office, he left 87 trillion naira debt. Over 75 trillion naira new debt was added. External debt, they moved it from 10 billion to 42 billion dollars. We are not even talking about the way and means of 3.5 trillion that Emefiele pretended and handed over to him, that they frittered away. In the same country, all of them will be in jail by now. Everybody, 60% of those who work in that government will be either being tried or prosecuted or already jailed. But of course, it's Nigeria, not the people get away with blue murder.
But Emefiele is under trial.
But Emefiele did not just bring the money and put it in his pocket. That money was given to people. Nigeria is the only. Did you see? Are you sure what's happening in South Korea? Yeah, see, if Nigeria is South Korea, most of the let me tell you, they will have all of even Buhari himself will have been on the dock, and that's the truth. Now let us stop pussyfooting and the sugarcoating mediocrity in Nigeria and in EFCC. We are where we are because of what happened over the last 8 years. Anyway, let me not digress. Like I said, one of the things I've discovered that we don't look at where we are today. We have no business having budget deficit of 13 trillion naira. Remember that in 2021, we had a national development plan that stated clear that we're going to have investment of over $35 billion in 2021 to 2025. In fact, we projected that in 2025 budget we're going to have a surplus. Today we are still talking about deficit. Yes. If we are doing 2.4 million barrels of crude, we will have had, if we add extra 400 million barrels of crude every day into that revenue waterfall, we will have surplus of 3 trillion naira. And it is doable. Why did the crude oil we used to produce did disappear? We know what to do. We need to invest into bringing new rigs. We need to be more efficient in our cost of production and all those stuff. We need to bring in new technology. They know what to do. We need to meter all our flow stations, all our pipes and everything. Saudi Arabia has over 15,000 mile pipeline coverage. Yet you won't hear that they are losing 1 liter. Even if a fly perch on their pipes, it will be detected. But Nigeria, why are we where we are today? Because we've refused to do the right thing, to put the right people with the right skill set and integrity in the right places to help us drive this process. And that is why we have no business having budget deficit. We have no business having a budget of 54 trillion when we can actually do 150 trillion. See, I sit here in my private corner. I scan the Nigerian space. I see a country that if we had followed in our growth trajectory in 1970, Nigeria had a GDP of $12.2 billion. South Korea, 58 million people, was $9.2 billion. Today, South Korea is doing $1.63 trillion, 58 million people. Nigeria is doing less than GDP of less than $200 billion. If we are to put our acts together and do the right thing, put in place the right constitutional and physical transformation, put in place the right electoral reform that will enable the right people with the right head, with the right mind, with the right integrity to be in the right places. I kid you not, in the next 12 years, we will have a $2 trillion economy. This country is too blessed to be where we are. We're supposed to be rubbing shoulder with Russia, with US, with India, with China. We're not supposed to be rubbing shoulders, even with South Africa. It breaks my heart. Indonesia was at the same level with us 1990. Indonesia is $1.4 trillion. We should be far ahead of Indonesia. We should be far ahead of Malaysia. We should be far ahead of South Korea. We are a country so blessed and so latently blessed by God with every demographics in place that the only missing link is leadership. If we are to resurrect Nnamdi Azikiwe, Tafa Bello, Obafemi Awolowo, Michael Obara, Lateef Jokonde, and Simon Bakwe, and put them in this Fourth Republic, by now we will have been far away. The problem is 99% of the political class in Nigeria have no conscience, they have no fear of God, they have no compassion, they have no empathy, they are full of banner ego. They are like hell-links in the Bible. Their thinking is how we can strip the sheep, how we can strip the cow, how we can disembowel it, how we can steal and how we can loot. These guys do not have the make of human kindness. And that is the major problem. When you have, do you know that if these guys are right, they can actually even make all the money they want to make without destroying the economy. But because they do not think legacy, they do not think long term, they do not even think about what their names will be like after they're far gone. And that is why today, see the way we revere Jokonde, we hear Jokonde, we hear him, we talk about this, we practically worship them. We talk about Michael Obama, people go dancing. If any human being can sit down and think about tomorrow, think about how will I be remembered, they won't be behaving the way they are behaving.
All right. So many heartbreaking conversations to explore. But as we wrap up, I want to deviate to something that maybe not a directly related conversation. I want to get your thoughts on the U.S. pausing foreign aid to certain countries, especially with USAID being in the conversation. 2023 was reported that Nigeria received over, I think, $1 billion from foreign aid, from the U.S. and how Nigeria has been reacting to it. There have been controversies that have sprung up as a result of this, but I want to hear your thoughts as we wrap up the conversation.
Between 2015 and 2023, over $7.8 billion was channeled into Nigeria through the USAID to agencies, NGOs. Let me tell you the truth, Olive. You know, some of us fear to say the truth. Some of us are not scared of saying the truth. Over 95% of aid funds channeled into Nigeria through all these agencies are NGOs are looted. In fact, I see most people that run NGOs in Nigeria as criminals. I'm not missing word because we know it. Some of them want NGOs to take care of themselves, feed their family, buy houses, right? Big can. Go and check. Look at across all the agencies in Nigeria that are enjoying this foreign aid. In fact, I'm so happy. If it's possible, Donald Trump should cancel it and provide new channels through which they can intervene and take this thing directly to the people. Look at what happened in 2019, 2020. COVID palliative that was given to Nigeria. Politicians took it and hid it in warehouses. It took the NSAS riots for people to break in to see it. They were preparing to use it to run the election. That is how wicked these guys are. So the truth is, Nigeria is actually supposed to be an aid donor, not an aid receiver. If we have pulled our proper weight, if Nigeria had lived up its expectations when this country became in 1960, today we should be doing what America is. We should be a country that has our own UNAID, giving aid to other countries. But I tell you, it's a good thing. I'm so happy with what Trump and Elon Musk are doing. And what Rubio, who is now head of the agency, they should reappraise the whole thing and restructure it. Let me tell you, all the agencies and NGOs that have been receiving aid from the state from 2015 to, they should ban them. In fact, if they have access to this interview, I am asking you, say directly, cancel and they blacklist all the agencies that have been receiving aid in Nigeria, all the NGOs from 2015 to 2023. Cancel them. Don't ever give them aid again, because these are, that is why we had the Chibok girls saga and all those stuff. Bring back our girls. This was part of the games. Because most of these NGO industrial complex in Nigeria are fronts of this West.
We are out of time, but are you saying
Africa and Nigeria?
We're out of time, but are you saying that you do not believe in the cause of the Bring Back Our Girls movement?
The cause. How did the girls even got missing in the first place? Have they been brought back? Only have all of them been brought back? The people that champion will bring back the girls, and they got power with it in 2015. This is almost 10 years after, and all the girls back. This is almost how many years after that incident? This is 11 years after that incident. Has Boko Haram been destroyed? Is it not painful for you only to hear that Boko Haram killed 22 of our gallant soldiers? Let me tell you, the truth is, if I am Mr. President, the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Air Staff, all of them will relocate to Northwest and Northeast. They can't come anywhere near Lagos or Abuja. When they are at the theater of war and their lives are being threatened, I tell you, in 6 months, they will wipe out. The governor of Zamfara State said it. If we have the political will, they can destroy the insurgents and the bandits in Zamfara State in 2 weeks. Only, let me tell you, we know what to do. Nigeria is too strong. Now, Nigeria is too connected. Nigeria is too blessed to be sharing accommodation with criminals. How many are they? What are their resources?
Right.
I wish we could have an extended conversation, Dr.
I think that we should at some point. Maybe we'll have you come back and join us for the extended conversation.
But we do appreciate your insight and thank you for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Moving on to your second top story, conversation of the day, the leadership crisis in the Lagos State House of Assembly, which began with the impeachment of former Speaker Mudashiru Obasa on January the 13th, doesn't seem to be near its end, despite Mojisola Meranda assuming office as Speaker. Tensions remain high. The lawmakers have since been divided on the matter, though they hoped a meeting with President Tinubu would result in a resolve. Reports say the lawmakers have been unable to get a meeting with the president as we speak. The president is on his way to France and Addis Ababa. But here's what you should know. A recent Governors Advisory Council, GAC, of the All Progressive Congress Lagos chapter meeting ended in deadlock over Obasa's removal. Some senior GAC members reportedly criticized Obasa's removal, allegedly describing it as a coup. Lawmakers even went to Abuja to meet with the president, but were unable to hold a discussion with him on the matter. It was learned that the president directed that Meranda remain speaker pending further consultations. Also, the Department of State Security, DSS, recently questioned some lawmakers over a petition allegedly filed by Obasa, where he claimed his removal was politically motivated, amongst other allegations.
All right, the conversation continues. We will be talking more about this much later, but now let's share a recap of the conversations we've had this morning. President Tinubu writes National Assembly increases 2025 budget to 54.2 trillion naira. Dr. Nameka Obiareri joined us to expand further on this. President Tinubu raises 2025 budget for security, agriculture, and more. Lagos Assembly Speaker dispute persists. President Tinubu to intervene. Now let's share with you what's coming up next.
Coming up next in Breakfast Central, group accuses Kogi governor of diverting monies. And of course, what Nigerians are saying, we'll be listening to that. And we'll also bring in the newspaper front pages.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We'll take you through the newspapers and see what the front pages of the papers are saying. And right after that, we'll introduce to you our guests. Let's bring up our first paper this morning. And the first paper that we're going to be looking at is This Day newspaper. On the front page of This Day newspaper, Tinubu increases 2025 budget. from 49.7 trillion naira to 54.2 trillion naira. And we see here it justifies why Mineral Resources Ministry was allocated extra 1 trillion naira. Shares additional revenues to Bank of Agric, Industry, Military orders. Bagudu explains increment. National Assembly promises, excuse me, to pass appropriation bill this month. Opposition lawmaker kicks. History as Dangote refinery exports 2 cargoes of jet fuel to Saudi Aramco. Court delivers ruling on NNPC's objection to refinery suit March 18. Wando offers shareholders additional stocks valued at 97.6 billion naira. And final story, PDP crisis. Party Board of Trustees urges the National Working Committee to swear in Ude Okoye as National Secretary. That's all on this day newspaper. Let's move on to the next.
The next paper we'll be looking at is the Daily Independent with the headline, PDP crisis, BOT backs governors, recognizes Ude Okoye as party scribe, and the rider says supports March 13th for PDP National Executive Council meeting. And also in the front page of the Daily Independent, Tinubu jacks up 2025 budget from 49.7 trillion to 54.2 trillion naira. We just had that discussion before we started the newspaper headlines. Tinubu departs for France ahead of OAU summit in Addis Ababa. And we also have on the front page of the Daily Independent, Gandhi J says Tinubu's reforms painful but unavoidable. And there's also a headline at the top of the Daily Independent newspaper there, Obasanjo Sultan can others preach religious tolerance for a united nation. You can't stress the importance of that. And we also have Dogara attributes Boko Haram other security challenges to bad governance. There's a headline there that says electoral fraud, court jails another professor in Akwa Ibom. I wonder what is happening with professors. Just yesterday, the President sacked 3 resident electoral commissioners, and there were lots of academics among them. 19 mounts pressure and Senate for solid mineral sector reforms. And lastly, reps urge FG to declare Ondo coastal communities disaster zones.
All right, these are the papers that we have this morning. If we have some time, we'll take some more. But let's introduce to you our guest, and then we can react to the story that we took before we went on the break. On my immediate left, I have Public Affairs Analyst, Professor Simeon Nna. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and wearing my collar, we have Mr. George Ashiru. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
It seems like we did the color coordination and we planned it, and it's good to have you in the studio this time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I think I'll start with you, Mr. Ashiru, to talk about the ongoing drama with Mr. Obasa and what exactly is going on. Initially, it was him being, quote-unquote, sidelined. I don't know that he saw that coming, and finally he's back, but there are talks of him potentially being reinstated, even though that has been debunked. There's also talks of him still being in the Speaker's Lodge, and I just want to get a general sense of what you feel about the whole story.
Well, the State Assembly is an organ of the people. You know, we elected them individually into office. And so whatever happens within that caucus of government is of great interest to the electorate, especially for those who are in the opposition like ourselves. We are really interested in ensuring that proper democracy is being practiced, and it lays a good foundation for the future prosperity. So I think what we have a challenge with is the secrecy around the whole thing. Removing of anyone in office is a statutory right of those who we elected there to hold them to account. So if he's to be removed, or he was removed, the only thing we ever expect from those who are representing us in the House of Assembly is tell us why. And preferably put him through the justice system. Let him be able to defend himself, explain himself. So for now, all we have is one side of the story. We have not had the opportunity at all. No platform has been provided for Obasa to give us his own side of the story. So you really shouldn't...
But he did have a press conference, sort of, when he returned from America.
That's not the platform. That is not a criminal justice process. It should be tried, tested. You know, the people should be able to ask him questions. He should go through, if it's EFCC or ICPC, that they have done that. We know that cases in other governors' cases and other political situations. So I think that's where we have a problem. I'm sure they have attempted to remove him 1,000,000 times before we had finally happened. Never happens in politics. You know, it's internally, he must have done what is needed to stay in office that long.
Right.
And then this time around, he just happened to have cut.
I mean, all that we see are speculations as to why they must have removed him. On the one hand, people say that it's because he dared to rear his head and potentially look at himself as someone who would run for office, gubernatorial position. They said he disrespected Sanwo-Olu. There are allegations of fraud against him. You are the chairman of the African Democratic Congress.
Yes.
Talk to us about the implications of what this might mean if it never gets to court, if he never gets a chance for a fair hearing, and, you know, if he just decides to take things lying.
The only thing that concerns us when it comes to people who are elected into office is if he violates the Constitution. We're not interested in whether his personal relationship with the governor. We're not interested in whether he has 2 shoulders or 1 head or five fingers that are in the wrong places. What counts is the dividends of democracy, which is what we voted for. So if he has violated that part, that trust that we put in him, lay it out, preferably before he's removed.
Can I, you know? I want to bring Prof into the conversation. These are elected officials, both the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Assembly, the former Speaker, and all the members. Nigerians and Lagosians elected them, and they have a right to know what is really happening, because they didn't put themselves there. They are answerable to the electorate. At what point does this stop becoming a family matter, an internal political matter, and what is the rightful thing to do? Because all we're hearing is they want to meet the president. Mr. President is busy with matters of state, and he shouldn't be bothering with domestic politics and things that are happening in Lagos. He's not the emperor of Lagos. The politicians should be answerable to the people. So, Prof, what do you make of all this? We thought it was done and dusted, and it has not stayed away from the news.
I think the thing has been overflogged. However, I have challenges with the removal. You don't shave a man's head behind him. He was not around. He was not even in the country.
But the law doesn't say you can't be impeached or you can't be removed if you're not on seat.
Which law? Any law that is contrary to the national constitution is wrong. Because the constitution, although some of us don't agree with that constitution, because the opening statement, we the people, is the fraud that I've had in this century, because nobody elected anybody to draft that constitution. That's a matter for another.
But the lawyers will say it was legally removed.
That's a matter of another. Sorry?
The lawyers argue that Obasa was legally removed by a majority of the National State House of Assembly members.
The so-called constitution of this country that I know makes it imperative that if you want to remove an elected officer, he must be physically present. And then you now say the things that he's done wrong, and then ask him to step aside. And then maybe the deputy will take over, and then the process will continue until he is being removed. But this one, the man was not around. You just gathered people and say he's been removed. And again, I don't know the part of the so-called GAC. That is, by its name, Governor Advisory Council. So it should be advising the governor, not advising the states. But they have taken the position of advising the states on what the state should do. I think that is basically wrong. So we should begin to watch this trajectory, because it's getting out of hand. They must do something and do it fast too. I think there are illegalities everywhere.
What about the allegations of financial misconduct?
Has it been proven? It's just an allegation. It's been alleged. So the person that alleged should go ahead and prove it in court. Until it's proven. I'm not siding anybody. But those allegations must be proven. If you know me, I say it the way it is. I don't care whose horse is God's. That's the way it should be. They have to go to court and prove those things in court, that actually he did those things. You know, because it's preposterous for somebody to build a gate for over $1 billion. Man, which country does that?
It's 17 billion, allegedly.
Which country does that? 17 billion, whooping 17 billion. That's a state's budget, for crying out loud, and use it to build a gate. So let them come and tell us how those things happen. He has said that he has documents to show that those things were, you know, fabricated stories. So we want to hear the truth. Let them go to court, and let's see how these things will pan out.
Wow. Anyway, Still looking at politics and politicking, the front page of the Daily Independent talks about the PDP crisis, says the Board of Trustees backs governors and recognizes Ude Okoye as party scribe. They support March 13th for PDP NEC meeting. Let's get your thoughts on the division that's happening in the PDP. I'll start with you, Prof. And what's happening regarding their secretary. They're choosing who the national secretary is has become an issue of debate right now.
It's still the same thing all over, because I don't know the party constitution, because some of them are saying the party constitution says you can keep your position
while you go and
contest, and when you fail, you come back. That's what some of them are saying. I don't know about that. But I know about the constitution of the country that says you have to resign. In fact, I can tell you, I can give you a succinct example, though with the 1979 election, constitution, sorry. What happened was that a particular deputy governor, Amalaha, who was supposed to be the deputy of the man we call Dr. Sam Mbakwe, now didn't resign his appointment in Avadikoku. He was a lecturer at Avadikoku College of Education. He was supposed to resign 3 months to that election. He kept his position and was running for the election as a running mate of Sam Mbakwe. Now, they eventually won the election, and the court said, no, you didn't resign your position, so you cannot be his deputy. That led to Mbakwe taking another deputy.
So he went back to the
Yes, he went back to Avadikoku. So he said, the law says you should resign. And let me tell you, the 1999 Constitution is a rider of the 1979 Constitution. So it's still the same thing. So he should have resigned his position before going to contest that election in Imo State. So having resigned his position, and the party have appointed another person. And look at the stories. Now the BOT and the governors forum all agreed, because they appointed a son who looked at the judgment from Enugu and the judgment of the appeal court. And they said they were on the same page. And they said, look, the rightful person should be the appointed person and they should be sworn in. So I don't know why people are making
a big deal out of it. Let me bring Mr. Asher into the conversation. When you look at the political landscape in Nigeria now, it seems like most opposition parties, the major ones, have some sort of internal wranglings and disagreements. Some have alleged that it's a ploy by the ruling APC to destabilize and weaken opposition in Nigeria. I'm not sure I've heard anything of sort in the African Democratic Congress, your party. What do you make of all of this?
Whenever you gather people together, there is always a struggle for power. That's not an unusual thing. So whether it's...
Yeah, but the opposition, they're not even in power.
No, I mean, power is nothing to do with being in government. Power is to control whatever entity. We have it in churches, we have it in religious institutions, NGOs, in families, even when they are poor. And I think so that's the first thing I want us to understand, that that's something that comes with the territory. Whether it's been sponsored or not, that's again politics. There is always going to be interference in the way your enemy operates. Anybody who rests on zoo or anybody out of war and all those sort of things, realize that everyone who is potentially your enemy politically, you do whatever you need to do to ensure that they don't...
By any means.
By any means possible. So I'm a realist. The reason I don't want to comment directly is that basically PDP is a party, I'm a party. So for me to be commenting on the internal issues that's going on in another party. Now, when you talked about African Democratic Congress, yes, we did have a crisis during the last election at the national level, which was then resolved through alternative dispute resolution. Of recent, everybody who was on opposite sides came together and said, okay, we're one family, we're going to move forward. So that's something that they could also do. But it takes leadership. It takes someone at the very top deciding that this party is greater than my ambition. This party is greater than my thoughts or my desires or my ambitions. So when you don't have a singular father, one of the things that I have to make a reference back to what happened in Lagos State. The idea of having a GAC is that you have a group of eminent people that no matter what the size of the disputes are, they can bring people together. But they are discussing Lagos State, and an unelected body is deciding the future of the state. That's where we have a problem. Not just that it's an unelected body, it's a body only of people within the ruling party. So they're not advising the governor, they're advising the head of the party. So it's to us, they're like the BOT. So whatever they agree among themselves, it's not binding on us as Lagosians. What we would like is that in other countries, when a prime minister or a head or the head of assembly is not, you call it snap election. Okay, you know what? We've just decided that we need a new leader. It doesn't even matter if you are doing very well. Yeah, they commit that, and then the rest of us will say, yes, go ahead and vote. This is the person we want you to vote for. But when you stay overnight, 12 midnight, 1 a.m., the person is not around. We had a lot of this during Obasanjo's era, where people were removed summarily, governors were removed summarily, and everything was upside down. But that is...
They even leave the assembly house and go to
some
hotels.
of them will carry the mace and they will do all kinds of things. Now that tells you that our democracy is still very weak and it is still not following due process. Impunity is the order of the day, you know, and while we are not necessarily here endorsing the lack of, or shall we say, we're not necessarily saying Obasa as a person. It was an individual.
No.
It's more about the process.
We're looking at the process.
It's about establishing the institutionalization of the right process. Because the culture you create is the culture the future will follow.
Exactly.
So if this is happening, if they wake up one morning and decide to remove the governor, nobody should talk. It's the same people have the power. If they wake up one morning and say, the governor did not do this for us and we've decided to remove him, everybody has to keep quiet.
That's a proverb in my place. It's when wickedness first starts for a year, it becomes a tradition.
I agree with that. Now, Prof, I want to bring you into this conversation. You're not a politician, or you've not declared yourself
I'm not a politician,
as a politician.
but I'm not apolitical.
Yes. Yesterday, chieftain of the APC, Ambassador Narain Mumuni, appealed to politicians to allow the president to deliver his campaign promises instead of dragging him into talks of the 2027 presidential race. We're not even halfway through his presidency, and there are talks of 2027. What do you make of all of this? I'll come to you, George.
Okay. That's why some of us have been advocating a 1 year, 5 term or 6 term.
So you can focus on the job.
So that you can focus on governance. Now, watch from 1999 to date. Once a head of state or a governor is elected, the first 1 year, he uses it to do 1 or 2 things. By the time he enters the second year, he's thinking of the next election. Politicians don't think of governance, they think of the next election. So that is why we're saying, let it be a 1 term, even if it's 5 or 6 years. Let the person know, once he gets there, he hits the ground running. And for 6 years, because he knows he doesn't have a second tenure. Watch them. When they get to their second term, they begin to do things you wouldn't have thought that they would have done. Because they now know that they don't have a chance of coming back.
Legacy project.
So that's why please, I don't know who is listening. Let the National Assembly agree on a single term of either 5 years or 6 years, so that these shenanigans will stop. Otherwise, we'll continue in the same circle.
Do you agree with that single 6-year tenure?
You know, I've been on this show when Atiku first mentioned it several months ago, and I said there's a danger of a single story around it as well. And that is that impunity is impunity. Whether you give them 2 terms or 1 term, people's character will still show. Even if they are not coming back, they will be political on behalf of who they want to take over from them. Because I'm in the party system, I can give you a little bit of that. There is a tendency for people to always think in terms of power for the sake of power.
Yeah.
You know, whether I'm inside or outside, I must control power. And then there's a lame duck issue that comes up with you being a 1-term president, which means after a while, people don't take you seriously. They start thinking of who the next person will be. Once you show them your hand, they decide, we're not going to benefit from this person. Let's start looking at the next. So we have to look at both sides. But I think the most critical thing for us as Nigerians, whether you are using parliamentary system, presidential system, monarchical system, is the type of leadership that whoever is president provides. Which means, if you are running a company, you do a business plan, don't you? You do feasibility studies. You plan ahead. If you're a university, sir, you're a prof. You have a curriculum.
Exactly.
You know, whether professors change, your curriculum doesn't change.
Exactly.
So you know you're going to graduate no matter how many people resign from the academic system. The same principle applies in government. I should be able to put together a 4-year plan that will run, even if I step down from office.
We don't have that control.
That is it. You see, the challenge we have, I've constantly said that, and for fear of sounding like a broken record, we don't have leaders. That's the problem. We have rulers.
Okay. Now, can there be constitutional guarantees to protect the electors, the citizens that are in the majority, that regardless of who's in power, you will get the best of governance and your rights will be protected? Because there's a sense of hopelessness that we can't do anything. Yeah. We've entered one chance until electoral cycles. 4 years is enough. A month is enough to destroy a person's life and future.
Every single thing you want to run the country well is in a policy.
Yes.
If you go and look at the state policies, local government policies, federal government policies, there are millions and billions of documents that tells you what to do. But the moment politics enters the fray, you choose which one you want to follow.
But another major challenge is the way these rulers are thrown up. Because the way you come to power determines what you're going to do.
Yes, true.
If you come through the back door, everything you're going to do will be from the back door.
We had a story, I mean, this happened in real life. Governor Ododo of Kogi State, when he became governor, he told his people that, look, if I give you an instruction and Yahaya Bello, the former governor, gives you an instruction, you should listen.
That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. That's the process that brought him up in power. So, and this godfatherism, you see, that takes me to something else. There's a thin line between mentoring and godfatherism. Now, godfatherism, the way we practice it here is, you know, the godfather takes it all. It's different from mentoring. If you mentor somebody, your mentee will benefit, and you will benefit from your mentee. The mentor will benefit, the mentee will benefit. But in the way we run godfatherism here, the godfather wants to take it all. Look at what is happening somewhere, I don't want to mention name, where an ex-governor is insisting that all appointees must pass through him. No, we know we had such things happen in Lagos. We don't know how far it's true. But you can't just wake up and tell somebody how to sleep with the wife. No, it doesn't happen because you brought him to power. No. Well, no.
It is until the people who have the votes really truly decide their leaders. That's where you take the power away from the government.
But how do they decide? How do they come together when they're too poor to even organize? They're thinking of
no matter how poor you are,
needs.
No matter how poor you are, you have the same votes as every single billionaire.
Yeah.
All right.
But
do you use it?
But Oshomole, when he became governor, destroyed that godfatherism. However, when he left power, he wants to be a godfather.
Okay. I want us to quickly come back to the papers again. Let's see if we can squeeze in one newspaper, the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch, we have the big story there. 54 trillion naira budget, experts divided over raise. Federal government adds 4.5 trillion naira agric infrastructure funds. President submits reviewed budget, MTEF to National Assembly. Federal government votes small funds for BOI and others. Tinubu demands school safety as fire kills 17 in Zamfara Islamic School. Edo Tribunal, INEC lists 5 witnesses over governorship poll. Nollywood filmmaker jailed 5 years for drug trafficking. Ogun assault. Falana receives elderly victim, plans charges against remanded monarch. Dangote Refinery, FCC, PC, DIFA as NNPCL insists on fuel import. Transporters, NLC chapters, TUC reject highway tolling. In fact, I'm sure Nigerians in general reject highway tolling. Yeah. Secession, Nigeria didn't learn from civil war, says Dogara. And finally, PDP secretary, Wike Camp kicks back as BOT backs governors. Okay, so let's start with the budget. The budget raise. I'll start with Mr. Shiru. Let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, I actually don't have very strong opinions about how the president wants to run his budget. What I want is it balanced? Which is, how much of it is set aside for debts? Because that's what usually one of the challenges we have year in, year out, is that it's deficit budgeting since Buhari came into power, which is we are essentially borrowing non-stop. And now it becomes a national crisis. As we know, that's part of the reasons that brought in Donald Trump into power in America. The idea that he is going there to sort of balance the budget gave a lot of people from the right the impetus to say he looks like the kind of person that can make it happen. Now, when you balance the budget, you can give tax incentives. But when you need to pay off your debt, you have to keep taking money from everywhere. So one of the reasons why you see subsidy removed, one of the reasons why everything is expensive is because the government is trying to balance the budget. It's looking for money from anywhere to pay off debts. And so we suffer in the end. But then they take more debts. And then, you know, this same cycle repeats itself, and inflation becomes to 5,000% over a period of a decade. So I think I'm more interested in looking at that budget from a point of view of, if you want to spend 600 trillion, that's no problem. Where's the money going to come from? And that is what is more important for us than how much is being spent. We want more money spent, but we want to know where you are going to raise the money from, because if you don't have any means of raising the money, your taxes are going up. You and I will pay more.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really the key. And for us, who have a more social understanding of how Africa needs to govern, we're interested in reducing the burden of the people. We are not interested in capitalism to the extent that it destroys 70% of the people who are multidimensionally poor. So to that, so if he's adding an extra 4.5 trillion, and the focus on that is an industrial growth, like through the Bank of Industry and Agriculture, I think that's a good one. Okay. That is the only one you can take a loan of $1 billion, and you and I can feel the difference, because our population is increasing. And you need to have food security, otherwise you're going to have riots. So that is fine. But if they're taking the money in order for recurrent expenditure,
payment of salaries,
for people to travel abroad, there we should kick.
Okay, I have challenges with the increase. The first challenge I have is that Baguda, when he was explaining to us yesterday how they came about at 4.5, he said FIRS will bring in 1.4, Customs 1.2, and the other sources 1.8. If you add that, that will give you 4.4. He has not told us why the 1.1 trillion will come from. That's one angle. The second angle is that this budget is debt financing. Now, couldn't we have used that money to service our debts, instead of borrowing to service debts? You see, I don't know the food economists we are running here. You borrow money to service debts, and now you say you have additional income. Instead of you now reducing your borrowing and using that to offset that aspect of the economy, you are now, you know, trying to create more jobs. Don't forget that he was saying he was going to create one enterprise, whatever, that BOT will be, BOA will be part of, Bank of Industry will be part of, and what have you. And some of us are arguing, why create another body when the Bank of Industry is there to take that, this thing. Jonathan did it in 2014 when he allowed the Bank of Industry to, you know, give loans to these manufacturing companies that were dying, and that loan was a single digit, because these organizations borrowed money at double digits. And then what the Bank of Industry came, the Bank of Industry now came in and gave them a loan to offset the debt they have, the money they have borrowed, and then have a running cost. And then the two will be consolidated on a single digit, I think it was 7%. But I happen to know, because I was restructuring a manufacturing concern then that benefited from that loan. So why are we now changing the trajectory? Now, you are borrowing so much, and you say you have gotten money somewhere. Why didn't you stop those borrowing? And what's the problem we're having today? IMF and World Bank conditionalities. That's the problem we're having. And they are telling us the economy will improve. The other time in the media chat, he said this thing will come down to 15%, from 34 point something inflation to 15%. The IMF chief that came here told us that this economy will improve in 15 years. So what are we saying?
But the increase would also help with infrastructure projects, which will create jobs and also stimulate the economy. That's a positive.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. The problem of this country has not been policies. At the end of the day, you will see that that money will not get to that ministry. That's what happens. Implementation is just our problem. Tell me any agency that implemented its capital budget to 50% this last year. You can't find any. That's the problem. So stop all this. This is just grammar. It's just showman biz. We are doing showman biz here, because those infrastructure are talking about now, it will not be implemented up to 50% by the end of the year.
All right. Let's get your thoughts, Mr. Ashiru, on this.
Well, the truth is, 70% of our entire GDP is generated by the private sector. So if you are bringing money and you're pushing it to the private sector, they can generate employment.
Of course.
Get the government's hands out of it. So as many things are out of government's hands, so that all they do is maintain public infrastructure and ensure that everything is running well, we will do extremely well. Now, the purpose of the Bank of Industries and all those other institutions in Lagos State, LSCTF, and all the CBN initiatives, all in the past, is to be able to move money into various segments and sectors and demographics of our economy, and then manage it well. But what we have discovered is that the people who are releasing the money are the beneficiaries of the money at the back end. So that you don't then get the effect you're supposed to get from this. So I'll give an example. Let's say you give 1 billion naira to a particular institution of government and say, distribute at a rate of 2, 3, 4, 5 million to maybe the Nollywood industry. And then you call the people in Nollywood and say, I'm sending you money, but 50% of that money is mine. So basically, the man now has less than he needs to do his work. So he's not going to be able to do that work. So he will just, might as well steal the...
Aren't there oversight agencies?
Who are the people? The same oversight, same person is giving you the money. Is the person that is oversight.
The VC just complained that they were asked to pay a certain sum before the budgets will be approved.
Oh, yes. So you hear
it was in the papers now.
You hear
it's not a secret.
You hear a lot of that. Even, I'm sorry to say, even in themselves states, you hear that agencies of government to get their budgets. Okay, let me not even go too far. When I was president of Nigeria Taekwondo Federation, I was invited, that was about, this particular invitation came about 7 years ago. I was invited to Abuja. I was in Morocco. I got a letter from National Assembly that come and defend the budget of your entity. Problem is I didn't write a budget. Who wrote the budget on my behalf?
Wow.
Somebody wrote a budget and submitted it to the National Assembly.
Defend it.
And then, but he wrote a letter now, since I'm the head of that agency, that I should come. Let me tell you a strange thing. Because I had to change my flight, I ended up being the only individual in one aircraft.
Wow.
Because I wanted to get back to Nigeria. I now go back to Nigeria, they now said, don't worry, we have taken care of it.
That's Nigeria for you.
I didn't write the budget. I didn't write the budget.
They didn't defend it.
I'm not the one that... some people went to defend it. The people that wrote it went to defend it. And they just told me, don't worry, we are taking care of it.
They went to defend it on your behalf.
And the minister at that time was now embarrassed because he now had to go and politically defend something that the public servants under him had done. And he was embarrassed publicly and it was in the media. So classic example of what I'm saying is that clearly the federal government budgeted a certain amount, but the MDAs under it did not see the money.
The Prof mentioned something, a proverb, that when you continue to do something, it becomes a tradition. If you can remind us of that.
Yeah, I said a proverb in my place. When wickedness festers for a year, it becomes a tradition.
So this is highly, these things that might sound comical, highly dysfunctional. At what point do we press the hard reset and say it needs to stop? Where does it start from? Because we have generations coming and they will think, this the normal way to do things. Who are you to do otherwise? And that tradition, if you don't do it, you won't get your budget passed, you won't get your file submitted. When do we stop? Or what will it take?
It will take Nigerians to stop it, because right now we are docile. And the politicians know the docility of Nigerians, and they are capitalizing on that. Remember, we were told positions are not served a la carte. You have to grab it and run with it. And somebody grabbed it and ran with it, and nothing happened. So it will continue that way because people are not reacting. Everybody stays in the cocoon and does analysis, end of story. Nobody is willing to confront the situation. As long as we continue this way, the shenanigans will continue.
I mean, every time we keep hearing Nigerians need to be the one to end this, Nigerians.
Of course.
But then is
South Africa did.
Kenya
did recently.
What different should Nigerians, what actions should Nigerians do that they haven't done?
Lagos State has the lowest voter turnout in the history of elections in Nigeria. And is the most advanced, most progressive state.
Yeah.
That's the lowest turnout of voters. So if people who are so educated and so knowledgeable in a very commercial entity refuse to come out to vote, then the few who choose to vote are choosing to vote the people that are benefited.
You know what's actually scary is that it might even get worse in 2027. Because if I use my state for example, I was on my way to work on the morning of the elections because we had to be at work. We saw this touts came. They came, they put up a strong fight. And the average Nigerian sometimes just want to be able to, you know, live and survive the next day. I mean, I don't know what it will really take.
It's not that. It's not that.
The courts are not helping matters.
Right.
The courts are not helping. Growing up, we were told that the court is the last hope of the common man. I think today they are the worst nightmare of the common man.
Gentlemen,
it was a pleasure having you both. Thank you for your insights and analysis.
All right. We'll, of course, now be heading out of the studio to X to see what Nigerians are saying. We'll find out what the topic is about. Stay with us. There's a blame game going on right now on social media and on X in particular. And some of the big names and some of the very big influencers have been mentioned in this crossfire that's ensued. And the conversation is dating back to 2015. We're looking at 2015 in retrospect. A number of Nigerians have argued that Nigeria was fast on the rise to becoming a much better nation with a much better economy, and that the statistics showed that by 2015, you know, the numbers were going to look much better, but that we took a dive down from 2015. So now the blame has been Jonathan versus Buhari. There's been arguments that voting Jonathan out of power was one of the worst decisions that Nigerians have made, while some others argue that, you know, voting Buhari into power was the best decision that Nigeria could have made at the time. Regardless of what side of the divide you are on, Nigerians have gone on X to share their thoughts. And let's take a look at what they're saying regarding this. And our first tweet this morning, we have our first tweet, and in this tweet, he's talking about, you know, who is to blame. Can we please display the first tweet? All right. The first tweet is from Agent Jake, who says, in retrospect, voting and supporting Buhari over GEG was a terrible decision. This should be admitted, he says. Now, one person whose name has been mentioned a number of times in the conversation is Aisha Yesufu, who, of course, was against the voting of President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan into power. She's argued that he's been whitewashed. And in her tweet, she says, they need subsequent failure to justify the failure they supported. Reason they are forever afraid to compare Jonathan to Obasanjo administration, which in spite of its flaws remains the best Nigeria has had, which should be a shame for us all. We are supposed to be doing better, not worse. There are many people who say that she should have apologized for voting in President Buhari and voting out Jonathan, but she's standing by her decision, saying she's not lily-livered. I believe that Maurice Moyo was one of the people who said that she should have apologized for her position. But there are other people who have reacted to this, and in their reactions, Kalu Aja has said, I can understand why people supported the economy of General Gowon and OBJ. I get the economic appeal of General IBB and Abacha. President OBJ and GEG still hold economic records. Too early to fully judge BAT, that's of course Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But Buhari, specifically his economy, there is no defending that. I have this open challenge. Name one macroeconomic variable that Buhari left better than he met it. Just name one. That's Kalu Aja. Senator Obi says, why do we always think or talk about how a problem started in the past? What happened to planning for the future? Blame games here and there, and the current government are not held accountable. If China continues to blame past leaders or emperors, will they get to where they are today? Later on, I will talk say it was because Mongo Park discovered River Niger. That's why Nigeria is not moving forward. We have other tweets. Peter Obi's first son, interesting name. Westino Mali once says, in 2015, shortly after Buhari became the president, people started trekking from Lagos to Abuja to congratulate him, whether they were sponsored or they were the real one. Whether they were sponsored or they were real, one thing was sure, it was a prophecy of the suffering ahead. Benga, let's get your thoughts. I think this was a very funny tweet. Remember that time when everybody was trekking in support of Buhari? Yes. Now we are really trekking
and some rode bicycles and all sorts of things. You know, I agree with I kind of align with the tweet that says if China blamed the emperors, it won't be where they are today. I mean, it's easy to look at things in retrospect and, you know, feel good about it. I said this, given the luxury of hindsight. And I agree with Maurice Moyi. I did see his tweet when he said, you know, there's no big deal in holding up. We saw, and the reasons why people voted this individual out was because of the metrics, the things they saw, the optics, and how they felt at that point, the whole-scale corruption that was happening. You know, NNPC saying, oh, billions of dollars missing. Even, remember, a former chief of air staff, Amoso, under President Jonathan, they found lots of monies in his soccer way and GP tank and what have you. So those kind of things helped, you know, with the campaign, and the Buhari team with the current president, who was a staunch supporter of him, and the PR team, they did a fantastic job in selling his candidacy to Nigeria. Nigerians are very nostalgic. They thought things were, our problem was in discipline, and they remember the good days of Buhari and Ediagbo, and they thought, you know, his nickname, yes, and his nickname was Megaskia. That's the honest one, to paraphrase in Hausa. And then, given the luxury of hindsight, looking at his 8 years, you would see that there was nothing. He lost control. But look at what he did 8 years later. So it's easy to blame. We should focus on governance now.
Yeah,
and let's get our.
I hear you when you say that, okay, people should take account, but then again, where the argument should be that what is the role of democracy if we have to insist to people who they should vote? Unfortunately,
exactly. I made a mistake. Oh, I know better. I supported
this man. What if she doesn't think it was a mistake? What if
looking at all the things he achieved in 8 years?
To say
I mean, she has the agency to decide what she feels, and no one should blame her for that. We all have independent thoughts, so you respect her decision. We're too harsh. We're too to fight.
Everything at war. But I think the one thing that we can all agree with is the fact that we are all united by our common suffering right now. We're united by the fact that we want a better Nigeria, and our focus should be on, you know, how to go from here forward to where we want to go.
One of the reasons we're suffering is because we keep looking at the past. If we had done better the last time at holding government accountable, a lot of what this government is dealing with and what is slowing us down is as a result of the past 8 years. So, yeah, like they say, government is a continuum. So let's focus on government and do what is right and stop.
Although, in all fairness, I can see why they're probably going back in time, because sometimes it's said that you can't really move forward if you don't go back in time to see, okay, what could we have done differently?
Introspect,
introspect and say, okay, what should we ensure that we don't do again to ensure that we don't find ourselves back in the same rut and in the same cycle? But rather than fighting each other, the people that we should be holding accountable are our leaders, our politicians. They're the ones who hold the future, who have held Nigeria by the jugular. You know, they're the ones that have a number of these questions to answer. And we will continue to play our role and ensure that we make the right choices. And in cases where you feel like, okay, you may have done something differently, I mean, it's okay to be like, okay, I've tried this, it's not working. You could try a totally different path. But let's move forward with peace. Let there be peace, eh? Peace. Okay. Let's wrap up the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Olive MOD.
And I'm Benga Bora. See you tomorrow. Thank God it's Friday.